Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Team Eldorado Biotech, myself, Dr. Saili Shrikhedkar, welcome you all for today's webinar on diabetes-induced comorbidities, depression, the most challenging disorder, under the program of Meet the Expert series. I first of all thanks our speakers and chairpersons to accept our invitation for this webinar, and also I welcome all the attendees, those who are with us this evening. Welcome you also. Before proceeding further, we will have a brief introduction of our respected chairpersons. I request to please play the video of chairperson's introduction.
Dr. Devdutt Deshmukh is an eminent name among the best neurologists in the country. With MBBS MD Pediatrics, DM Neurology, Dr. Deshmukh is presently consultant neurologist at the Neurocare Hospital, Aurangabad. Talking about his professional career, he worked as consultant neurologist at Care Hospital and Institute of Medical Sciences, Hyderabad in the year of 2009-10. He was lecturer in pediatrics and neonatology in the esteemed Keen's Medical College, Nakitpalli, Andhra Pradesh in the year of 2006. Dr. Deshmukh has a wide array in teaching as well. He has over 3 years teaching experience for UG students while 1 year for PG and super specialty students. He also has 5 years experience for teaching in nursing sector. Also, Dr. Deshmukh played a role of trainer for medical officers in A&M working in rural medical health services. Dr. Deshmukh has published huge number of research work and case reports in many national and international conferences of neurology, wherein he was bestowed with many prestigious awards. Dr. Deshmukh has a special interest in interventional neurology, neurocritical care, and epilepsy. He is well known for his marvelous practice in the field of neurology. Dr. Vinay Chapalgaonkar is a renowned name heard across the channels. Dr. Vinay Chapalgaonkar has completed his MBBS from Sri V. N. Government Medical College, Yavatmal in the year of 1996. After that, his keen interest in psychiatry made him to complete his post-graduation from the prestigious KEMH College, Mumbai in the year of 2000. Since then, Dr. Chapalgaonkar is a well-known consultant psychiatrist in the city of Aurangabad. He is practicing for over 20 years in Aurangabad. He is recognized for offering excellent patient care.
So this was a brief introduction of our respected chairpersons. Now I request Dr. Devdutt Deshmukh sir to just open the session with his opening remarks regarding today's meet. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Saili. I welcome you all, and in the new era of webinars, we are putting up a very really positive step forward. Coming to today's topic, today we have a very eminent senior diabetologist, Dr. Indurkar sir, with us. Diabetes is very common, and again various comorbidities of diabetes. One of the most common but yet neglected part is comorbid depression. So sir will be throwing some light and uh, educating us on this area, and I request Dr. Indurkar sir to please start with his session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Devdutt Deshmukh sir. Now I will introduce our speaker, the most eminent diabetologist in Aurangabad, Dr. Sanjeev Indurkar. I request to please play the video.
Dr. Sanjeev Indurkar is a renowned senior medical practitioner since 1988 from the city of Aurangabad. He is basically practicing with over a quarter century professionally in diabetology. With MBBS MD medicine qualifications, Dr. Indurkar is the chief diabetologist of Diabetic Care and Research Center. Dr. Indurkar is honorary at prestigious hospitals like Psychocritical Care Bajaj Hospitals, Aurangabad. Dr. Indurkar is well known for his significant achievements. He was organizing president for DEFCON 2016. He holds a remarkable position at RSSDI as a chairman. Specifically speaking, he was organizing chairman at Maharashtra State Chapter of RSSDI. Also, Dr. Indurkar is best teacher as is well known for his teaching skills. Dr. Indurkar is a faculty for PHFI since 2009 for diabetes and GDM courses. Also, he has spent several years in research activities that prominently includes Carolina and Raman.
Yes, so this was a brief introduction of Dr. Sanjeev Indurkar. Now I request Dr. Indurkar to please start with his valuable guidance, sir. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. My chairpersons, Dr. Vinay and Dr. Devdutt, who are psychiatrists and neurologists. And in this era of panic because of COVID, rather than discussing regarding COVID, we thought why not to discuss a very interesting topic which goes as one of the commonest comorbidity of diabetes mellitus. We always talk about diabetes and discuss about various complications of diabetes, and during this we have always discussed various complications like neurology, nephrology, eye, and other complications of diabetes, and comorbidities with diabetes like dyslipidemia, hypertension, but very rarely we talk of depression. This is a time when we all are passing through an unprecedented situation where we have anxiety, we have some worries, we may have some depression too, to some extent. And in view of this, we have decided that to discuss a very interesting comorbidity of type 2 diabetes, which is depression and anxiety related. Friends, the prevalence of diabetes is very high, going up, as Dr. Devdutt has said. The incidence and the availability of coexisting disorder, which is known as depression, is also seen with diabetes mellitus. And as I was discussing, that they are very common and the coexistence is very bad, and that's why we have decided that we'll be discussing the interesting topic diabetes, which is one of the very common comorbidity available or with diabetes mellitus. We all know that while discussing this topic, we are going to learn the aspects of depression as a comorbidity. I know we have neuropsychiatrists in our panel, so I am going to limit my discussion of depression, anxiety or anxiety depression to the level at which a healthcare provider, apart from neurologist and a psychiatrist, would be able to deal. Then we are going to assess the depression, how far it is, and then we are going to plan the treatment of this particular morbidity. We all know that depression as a disease, when existing with diabetes, a consultant, a healthcare provider has to look at patient as a whole, take care of his disease as a diabetes, and look for depression because he is going to have these two comorbidities available or at present in the community. If you look at list of comorbidities, though it begins with hypertension, depression is almost 7%, which is a significant percent of our diabetic population. And this depression comes because of multiple stressors, which we are probably remembering or even anchoring nowadays. It could be lifestyle risk factors, emergence like obesity, physical inactivity. It could be cardiovascular, neurological, and other complications. And all together, they are going to worsen diabetes mellitus very, very badly. What could be the possible psychosocial stressors? It could be emotional distress, exposure to lifestyle stress, job strains, low economic conditions, workplace stress, personality traits, negative attitude, aggressive behavior. Friends, and these all stressors are probably now at peak for every individual, whether he is diabetic or not, in view of COVID pandemic. All these psychosocial stressors are going to make the disease worse by non-compliance to diabetic therapy, and worsening of the symptoms could be worsening of the complications. And in doing so, we have to look at ADA standards, which clearly suggest that whenever type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes is uncontrolled, you have looked for various reasons and still the answer is not there, please look for a mass depression, hidden anxiety, or some psychosocial comorbidity which is there with diabetes mellitus. We have searched the comorbidity and now we are looking why depression is having a reciprocal causal relationship with diabetes. The reasons are stress disturbs the body homeostasis, releases ACTH, cortisol in bloodstream, activates hypothalamic pituitary axis. It alters glucose transport function, and in a pre-diabetic, it can make person diabetic, or in a non-diabetic individual, it can induce insulin resistance, which can make that particular individual to develop obesity, diabetes mellitus, or hypertension. So friends, stressors have played their parts. The pathophysiology has worked out, and the individual who was pre-diabetic has become diabetic, and who is a diabetic, his diabetes has gone hayward because of stress. There are multiple pathways through which stress affects neuroendocrine pathways, autonomic process, and inflammatory process, which hiddenly goes across endothelium. And all these pathophysiological mechanisms result into diabetes and a comorbidity like major depressive disorder mingle with each other, and they try to disturb both the diseases through various mechanisms. And that is the reason a person who has diabetes, probably with an unknown or hidden depression or a known depression, becomes hayward because of depression affecting diabetes mellitus. So we have seen how both these two comorbidities exist, affect each other negatively when both are uncontrolled, affect positively both are when controlled. So a situation comes, we have to assess diabetes and depression both for beginning the therapy and doing a good proper diagnosis. We have been working, looking at diabetes, sugars are high, A1C is going up, patient is not comfortable. So now we have to look at a comorbidity which is widely missed, known as anxiety depression or anxiety. If you look at the prevalence varies from Uganda to Bangladesh from 1 to 29%. A wide range of people in diabetics can be affected because of depression, which is there in the background. 1 in 3 patients suffering with diabetes had almost double the risk of major depressive disorder. 40% in 2 years diabetics will have MDD as a comorbidity within 2 years, and it is estimated that around 20 to 30% of patients with diabetes develop major depressive disorder in various forms. Don't get panicked by the statistics. Don't get in a situation that, oh, it's very common. Yes, it is very common, the coexistence of depressive disorders with diabetes. But if you assess it properly, if you look at it and try to proceed with understanding the cause of diabetes and depression, we know that diabetes is a situation which comes as a blow, and it's a chronic incurable disease. So this is a first burden on the patient. There is a social isolation. There is a fear of therapy, could be injectables like insulin or GLP-1 agonist. Other quality issues in life would be there: fear, anger, despair with living in diabetic situation and fear of failing at keeping diabetes care. So basically, once you are struck to have diabetes, there are multiple anxieties, multiple issues, multiple stressors coming initially. And your diabetes, once controlled, probably you settle down gradually. But in a clinical situation, we may face that a well-controlled diabetic suddenly deteriorates, his diabetes goes hayward, and probably stress at the background is responsible, leading to anxiety, leading to depression, or it could be anxiety, depression, both. We have many diabetics who are elderly, above 60. Them we label as geriatric patients. And friends, remember about 20% of elderly experience diagnosable mental disorders. Very important. 80% may not have diagnosable disorder, means mass disease. Most common is anxiety, severe cognitive impairment, depression, and could be worst suicidal thoughts. So every type 2 diabetic, elderly, we have to be more worrisome, more careful, and see that whether they have some hidden reason for depression in their life. And it is in diabetes, it is strongly recommended that you must look for depression, anxiety, or cognitive disorders in every elderly diabetic. How we are going to assess it? Probably this is a part of a psychiatrist, but I would just let you know. Depression and anxiety we assess by various scales. Diabetic specific, we have various scales. We have quality of life assessment with WHO and geriatric depression scale, which have a questionnaire. So this is once assessed by a qualified psychologist or a healthcare worker, and patient is diagnosed to have depression or anxiety, which could be again because of multiple reasons: diabetes, stress, life issues, other worries. And while assessing this, we have to look for possible causes for continuous hyper episodes. These are the indirect surrogate markers or indicators that probably something is going wrong, and patient could have anxiety related disorders or could be major depression coming in. Palpitations, phobia, situational anxiety, cognitive defects, especially in geriatrics, presence of anxiety disorder symptoms, comorbid mood disorders, presence of fear disease. I am not going to confuse you by increasing number of the list, but remember, any chronic disease becoming hayward, please remember he could have anxiety, a mass depression, and while taking history, while assessing patients, please give enough time to the patient. While assessing him, please ask regarding his social life, addictions, worries, and any other issues which could precipitate, which could land him in a depressive or anxiety depression situation. Multiple studies like this Lussman and Magner, they have categorically shown that coexistence of these two diseases are widely known. Higher A1C and more diabetic complications were seen in African Americans with high depressive symptoms. Meta-analysis shows that depression is associated with uncontrolled diabetes. So beyond doubt, it is proven that they coexist together and they can deteriorate each other's parameters very badly. Look at this very simple graph which clearly suggests that the greener line, which is of a depressed patient, over a period of pretty long duration, when we control depression with non-depression and try to compare their glycemic status, it clearly shows that over a period during which patient has anxiety or depression, his glycemia is persistently uncontrolled, his A1C is persistently high. So again, I would like to emphasize that friends, any uncontrolled diabetic, please remember hidden diseases as we see for urinary tract infection or some other hidden infection. Please look for anxiety or depression and anxiety depression. And if you search it, try to manage it either at your level or with the help of neurologists, psychiatrists, which will deal subsequently. Why we should do this? Is there any data that when depression strikes a diabetic, something goes wrong? Here it has been clearly shown that no diabetes, the problems are least, no depression, no diabetes. No diabetes, depression, the problem they goes up. Diabetes, no depression, they are still high. But the last bar shows that when these two diseases coexist, the risks are higher of death, and this risk is beyond that due to having either diabetes or depression alone. Remember, only depression, risk is there. Only diabetes, risk is there. But when they coexist, the risk doubles up. And that is the reason to tackle mortality, to tackle morbidity. I think again and again I am insisting, we have to remember, we have to push this morbidity which comes with diabetes. Now coming down to treatment plans for diabetes, depression, comorbidity. Very clear, we have mild depression, moderate depression, and severe depression that we'll be seeing subsequently. As far as non-psychiatrist, the management of depression has to be at an early stage. Our job is to search the comorbidity, diagnose it, try to discuss with the patient, and if it is mild one, if it is earlier part of only anxiety, only depression, or combined anxiety and depression, then only probably therapy has to be done by me or you. If the patient is severely bad because of depression, I think he has to go to a psychiatrist. This is very clear. But on the other side, if we have 100 depressive patients in the society, out of that about 20 to 30% are severe and they need to go to a psychiatrist. But rest of the patients who are of a milder variety, we should all be able to tackle them, initiate treatment, and start the therapy. And if after certain time they do not respond, then probably we have to refer them to a psychiatrist or a neuropsychiatrist. The therapy consists of, we have diagnosed, we have recognized. It should start with a psychological therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, counseling, and this has to be properly supported by medications. Remember, if you suggest any patient to go to a psychiatrist, he will first say, no, doctor, I don't have anything. Please don't refer me to a psychiatrist. This would be the reaction of every patient. But then you have to take him in confidence, talk with him, explain him the situation, why he has developed this comorbidity, how we are going to tackle this. Once you pacify him, being his primary healthcare provider, you can initiate the therapy, as I said, to a milder variety of depression and go ahead. And while tackling the milder variety of depression, we have a step like identify depression, identify high risk, and then begin with the problem solving therapy. I know the mild depression, moderate depression, severe depression, and very severe depression. We have wide variety of drugs, SNRI, SSRI. We are not going to discuss them. A psychiatrist is the best person to tackle and look after them. But as I said, every patient cannot go to a psychiatrist. Every person would not like to go to a psychiatrist. Every patient would be reluctant, and most of them could be of a milder variety or a moderate depression, which should be tackled at a primary healthcare provider. We have SNRI, which include duloxetine, venlafaxine, desvenlafaxine. We have SSRI, which includes citalopram, escitalopram, and etc. So usually both these drugs have some benefits, some side effects. The choice has to be done by a clinician depending on side effect profile depending on patient's clinical presentation, depending on associated comorbidities, we have to choose a drug. Back to primary healthcare provider, which you and me are, we are not qualified psychiatrists. A basic drug like escitalopram, which has very low side effect profile, minimal inhibitory effect on cytochrome T450, significant reduction in depression without the risk of hypo and hyperglycemia, very pertaining to our diabetic patient, and a dualistic action on depression and control of diabetes. We have multiple drugs, I have already said, but this drug looks little comfortable, little safer, and has a beneficial effect on bringing down fasting blood sugar from 177 to 108 in 12 weeks, PP from 254 to 146, and A1C from 9.88 to 8.53 in 12 weeks. Possibly, primarily, I feel that this can be used in a diabetic because apart from taking care of depression, it has positive effect on diabetic parameters also. There are other drugs like fluoxetine or some who do have some beneficial effects on glycemic parameters. But escitalopram looks to be reasonably safer and better, and that is the reason probably this stands tall amongst other brothers of this class, and that is why we are going to use this particular molecule at a primary level of non-psychiatrist consultants. Remember, depression is most of the time associated with anxiety, or it can begin with anxiety and it could be anxiety, depression both. And while there is anxiety, typical symptoms like uneasiness, palpitation, tachycardia, disturbed sleeps, dreams would be there. And to tackle this, we should have a good anxiety agent. There are plenty from benzodiazepines to the latest one. They should have lesser side effects, short acting but prolongedly effective. Dose convenience, should not cause daytime sedation, very important benefit, should not cause weight gain. A diabetic should have as far as possible neutral weight drugs and should not interfere with drug interactions. Probably etizolam is one of the best molecules which can be, if required, combined with citalopram or could be used independently depending on situation. All aspects, chemical structure, mechanistic action, pharmacokinetic actions, its beneficial effects, everywhere it scores very well. And if we combine these two drugs, as an Indian doctor, we have a great habit of using a pill with fixed drug combination. What is the benefit of this FDC or a combination pill? One, it will have a good compliance. Instead of 2 tablets, patient has to take only 1 tablet. Second, it makes him more convenient. Thirdly, the cost goes down. And that is the reason, take hypertension, take diabetes mellitus, take any chronic diseases, multiple drugs are required. And when there are multiple drugs, using a combination is very, very useful and beneficial to us. If you look at this combination, we have citalopram, which increases serotonin levels, thus stimulating neurons to remodel with its superlative action. Etizolam acts on BZD receptors. So combination affects on anxiety, depressive symptoms. They downregulate the increased HPA axis and reverse insulin resistance. Thus, it can bring down insulin resistance. It can make a diabetic who has developed diabetes from pre-diabetes because of anxiety. So if you look at this combination, which together a double-edged weapon acts positively on this combined disease, which we often routinely see. You'll say, we have so many patients, how to identify, how to go ahead, how to look at. A very routine patient coming to my OPD, a 45-year-old male, known diabetic on triple diabetic therapy, was very well controlled recently, but since last 3 months, his sugars are going up. I examined him. There were no abnormalities. I tried to change the drugs, but there was no improvement. His fasting PP A1C went up. Initially, there were no reasons. We checked for urine infection, we checked for other infection. But when a detailed history was taken, he was assessed for symptoms of anxiety, depression, stress. It was found that he had tensions related to his profession, which made him anxious about economic conditions that resulted in disturbed sleep as well. So probably this was a beginning of anxiety depression. We began him with a combination of 10 milligrams citalopram, etizolam 0.5. It was started. Slowly he started coming for follow-up. After 15 days, he felt better. That was the only benefit. His sleep was good, and over a period of next 2 to 3 months, he started improving. His sugars settled down. His A1C became normal. And after that, we tapered the therapy. And in about 3 to 6 months, his medical treatment for depression and anxiety was discontinued. Such many patients, I, you, me, everybody see in OPD. We can use this combination. It is well tolerated with minimal toxic effect, no or minimal daytime sedation, very effective in working and young population. We all know that most of the older psychiatric medicines cause tremendous sedation. Patients sleep for 12 to 18 hours, but the newer drugs are far better and they are really, really good. That's why we choose this for depression. There were no rebound symptoms on withdrawal, helped in stopping or preventing worsening of diabetic complications, maintained the elevated levels within a small duration of time, and being a single tablet, which is again an advantage, the patient compliance was 100%. Coming back to pandemic and panicdemic, this is a current situation, fearful, anxious. We are worried about COVID-19. We are worried about coronavirus. We are worried that this will settle down. So these worries, this anxiety, this tension is prevailing probably now at highest level. And even in these 2 months, I get many calls from my patient saying that, doctor, I am sleepless. When this pandemic will go off, my sugars are shooting up. I am having palpitation, I am having fear. So I have to tell them, be calm, try to convince your mind, do good exercise, pranayam, yoga, take a very healthy diet, and if required, probably we have to give them something like this which will be useful in their anxiety or anxiety depression. Before I conclude, I would like to remind you that diabetes and depression are one of the commonest diseases in society. They coexist in a very high percentage. Both diseases negatively affect the interfere in the clinical improvement of each other. Many a times, depression is masked, diabetes is undetected. We keep it in mind in unresponsive cases. Both depression not responding, check for diabetes. Diabetes not responding, check for depression. If we treat both these diseases aggressively, the improvement is really dramatic. The combination of both drugs in a single pill for basic mild depression is effective, works very well, cost effective, and as I said, at this particular level of milder or moderate depression, you and me to certain extent can use this medicine and try to solve the issues. So friends, I conclude and I request my co-chairperson to take over for his comments and then we will be open for your questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Sanjeev Indurkar. It was truly amazing and eye-opener session for all of us. Now it's time to have a panel discussion. So I request Dr. Deshmukh and Dr. Chapalgavkar to take the charge. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations, Dr. Indurkar sir, for extraordinary presentation. That shows how hard you have worked in this field. Thanks a lot. You have mastered not only diabetes, but I think various aspects of psychological health also.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. Dear all, as we just now heard Dr. Indurkar sir, that we are amidst like a capital place for diabetes as well as depression. World Health Organization has already warned us that you need to be prepared to handle psychological issues also. And depression is going to be #1 diagnosis in India after 2020. So it is very essential for every one of us to understand the psychological aspects also while doing medicine practice or any specialty practice. I'm sure that all specialists must be seeing at least 2 to 3 diabetes patients per day, irrespective of their specialty, and they must be seeing 1 or 2 depression patients also along with that. So, sir has nicely explained how to go about it and help patient to manage both kinds of comorbidity, because it is our experience, especially with sir, that many a times if sugar is raised, it is not under control. Psychiatric medicines don't work that effectively, and vice versa. If patient is not doing well psychologically, diabetes becomes little bit difficult to get controlled. So as sir said, it is very important that we have to have a holistic approach for betterment of the patient. Thank you, Devdatta sir, and I hand over to you, sir.
Saili, if there are any questions?
A few questions.
Yeah.
With your permission, can I start with it?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the first question is from Dr. Preeti Dange. Sir, in your list of comorbid conditions, depression is. Ek second. Sir, wait a sec. This is the first question. So, in the current scenario of COVID-19, it has been continuously told that patients with condition of diabetes, hypertension, etc., are on higher risk, along with high mortality. Such continuous impact may of being the primary target may depress the diabetic or hypertensive patients. So, should a physician or a cardiologist or a diabetologist start prescribing safe antidepressant immediately? And if yes, for how many days?
I would give a brief comment about this, and then I would request Dr. Chapalgavkar to have a detailed suggestion about this. As I said in my talk, that early mild depression, anxiety depression is very common, and every patient in such situation cannot go to a psychiatrist, or he may not be able to go to psychiatrist. So if you are convinced that patient has anxiety or anxiety depression, I think you can initiate the treatment, start it, monitor it regularly, and a milder depression to moderate depression would require 2 to 3 months of therapy. And once he settles down, you gradually taper it off, and then you can discontinue. Dr. Vinay, please have your comments.
Yes, absolutely. If patient becomes better, and if you don't require to restart the medicines again once he's better and you taper off, then it's okay. It can be a transient depression related to the situation we are right now in. In case patient starts suffering again or developing relapse and all, then we can have a reassessment of psychological symptoms again.
There is one more question from Prasanna Deshmukh. Does previous history of depression increases risk of type 2 diabetes? Any studies, any percentage? I would request Devdatta and Dr. Chapalgavkar to have comment about this.
Vinay sir, तुमच्यासाठी.
I am not getting the question. Diabetes 2.
History of depression, risk of diabetes in future.
Well, I haven't studied this topic particularly, but yes, it is highly possible because psychological health is imminent part of physical health also. So if you are having some kind of psychological disturbance, you are likely to be prone for any kind of physical disturbance or disease.
Prasanna, as far as I have read it, there is no big data which studies history
Yes.
of depression in diabetics and the percentage of uh, persons becoming diabetic. I don't think there is any data available. Next question, Saili.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll read for you. Sometimes, even after proper algorithm of anti-diabetic therapy, a patient may show high HbA1c and fasting post-meal levels. Should a change in thought process by considering that depression may be a limiting factor and adding antidepressant drugs may be helpful?
I don't think so. You have to be very confident that patient has some anxiety or anxiety depression. After evaluation, taking history, if required a psychiatrist opinion, then only please start antidepressant or anti-anxiety. We cannot start it empirically because the diabetes is uncontrolled. Next question, Saili.
Sir, it's from Dr. Deepak Bhosle. Is there any comparative data of antidepressants on parameter of glycemia like HbA1c, FBS, and TBS?
Vinay, you would like to comment?
No, I haven't studied any.
Actually, I showed just one small study which compared fluoxetine, escitalopram, and paroxetine. And that study has shown that probably escitalopram is safer and more effective in diabetics. There must be more studies which we have to look at, and we'll come back to you once we have any data available regarding this. Next, please.
How long therapy with such combination can be continued?
Vinay?
Yeah, as just now, sir already explained, like for 2 to 3 months and symptomatic control, you have to wait. In case symptoms are not improving, we can further enhance the dosage and continue the treatment for some time. But in any case, once patient is asymptomatic, you have to taper the dose in next 3 to 6 months actually.
Right. Our patients are in hurry to stop the therapy for chronic psychiatric diseases. Remember, depression would require therapy for at least months to a complete year, and there could be some unfortunate patients who would require a lifetime or a very long-term therapy for depression or major depressive disease to keep their diabetes well controlled and keep their depression also under control.
Yes.
So, next question is by Dr. Prasanna Deshmukh. Does antidepressants leads to diabetes?
I don't think there is any data, but the anticonvulsants which were used in older era, like dilantin sodium and tegretol, there is data, there are publications which suggest that they can cause diabetes. They can make a person who is absolutely non-diabetic, they can make him diabetic. Only the recent drug, olanzapine, which has come in a very big way, that initially when olanzapine was started, practically every third or fourth patient started becoming to have diabetes, or those who were diabetic and put on olanzapine, their control went up like anything. So that is the only recent drug. Any comments from Vinay or?
Yeah, see, psychiatrists are not worried about diabetes for prescription of antidepressants.
Okay.
Olanzapine being antipsychotic, and it
Yeah.
is really having association with hyperglycemia and all. So for antipsychotics, it's very much possible, but antidepressant, we don't have any studies as such right now. But as we know that we are having many new molecules, and we don't have enough data as of now.
Basically, I would like to add something. Dilantin, carbamazepine, olanzapine per se has been our clinical experience, and there is a data also that a euglycemic patient may show signs of hyperglycemia on blood tests after using these medications.
Yeah.
But the meta-analysis and the analysis by virtue of what has pointed out that his appetite becomes more, he goes for sugar craving, then his weight increases. So by virtue of that, the insulin resistance increases, his total body fat percentage increases, and thus he is more prone to develop diabetes in such type of situation.
Yeah. And all these are not used for depression, I suppose.
Yeah.
You are right.
Yeah.
There is one question from Krishna Deshpande. If pathophysiology says stress hormones precipitate or aggravates diabetes, how many months or years will it take? There is no data quoting that exactly how many months it is going to take, but it is a chronic process. Could be at least 3 to 6 months of stress, persistent anti-diabetic hormones pouring in, and that person can become diabetic. Anything to be added by my co-chairpersons? Yes, Saili, any question?
Yes, sir. So you had listed many comorbid conditions. Majority of them can be known by a physician by carrying out various diagnostics. Depression is somewhat which is not easily known by physician at time spent in OPD with patients is minimal. Should a physician inculcate some questions in routine examination to know about depression level in diabetes? Can we say now it's time for physicians to start using PHQ-9 scale?
Vinay?
Yeah. See, anyone can get depressed, anyone can get some anxiety. So it is normal part to be feeling depressed transiently, right? So anyone, if we have to label as a depressed or anxious, we have to go for at least 2, 3 things. One is severity of the symptoms, second, duration of the symptom, and third, its effect on its personality functioning. So if in case you are having a depressed mood for 2 weeks and it is causing a impairment in your day-to-day functioning, then you are going to diagnose him as a depressed or according to DSM-4 and ICD classification. So what we have to do is that we can't ask directly leading questions whether you are depressed, whether you are anxious and all that. You have to ask how they are going about their routine. Is there any change in their routine? And is it is occurring any interpersonal relations stress? Are you getting easily frustrated, tolerate intolerance and all that kind of things? So in short, if you ask indirectly and try and assess the functioning of the personality in last 2 to 3 weeks, if it is disturbed, then you can conclude that he must be having some kind of psychological disorder.
Thank
One
you,
more
sir.
question for Vinay, you.
Yeah.
The question is, in healthcare professionals, this combination exists also. So should we
Yes.
aggressively treat it, or we should put them only on counseling? Doctors with depression and diabetes.
Sir, counseling helps to certain section of patients, only
Right,
those who are having a
right.
psychological
Correct,
mindedness and having some
correct.
kind of insight and wants to improve
Hmm.
and know that they are having some kind of disturbance. But as you just now pointed out that मेरे को कुछ है ही नहीं, I don't need to go to psychiatrist. We
Yes,
start from that,
yes, yes,
right?
yes.
So many people
Right.
don't have that insight that they are having some problem. So many a times to diagnose all this, we have to take help of people around them also.
Okay.
So
And
one
One
many a
more.
more
times we have to enforce
interesting
the
question.
treatment.
We all three will reply that. Yeah, sorry. The treatment for obese and pre-diabetic patient with depression. I would have my comments, then probably Devdutt and Vinay can have. There are no specific drugs for obese pre-diabetic with depression, at least from a diabetologist point of view. But there are two things which we would do. One is a good counseling of that obese, depressed, pre-diabetic individual, assess the cause, and very, very important, as he being a pre-diabetic, we must apply more of a physical or exercise therapy, bring him to a gym, bring his weight to normalcy. That may help to some extent. Vinay, please.
Yes, along with antidepressants, supportive therapies do help a lot in such kind of patients. You have to keep them motivated that you are going to reduce the weight, and with reduced weight you are going to do wonderful, and that kind of thing helps them.
Devdutt, any addition?
Yeah, as Vinay rightly said, The population strata, the socioeconomic strata, the education background, all these things they come into play because there is a certain population which says I want a pill, and they think that with pill everything is possible. So such type of population you need to give a pill.
I
Otherwise,
think, yeah, please.
they will go to someone else and take a pill.
I think you have to judge it.
Yeah, and those who have some insight, we have to build positive thinking, exercise, meditation, and pranayam, as you rightly said, and then make him aware of his problem, and then help him to deal his problem, rather than giving him a pill.
I think in our clinics, we get patients who are typical type A. They are always anxious. Mostly they don't require any drugs in most part of life. Secondly, we have patients with anxiety, depression. Some of them may settle down with counseling only, but my experience is that all those with early anxiety, depression, or anxiety should be put on such combinations for certain amount of time with a proper counseling. And as Devdatta said, positive attitude and all other things, they definitely respond and their drugs are withdrawn within couple of months. Vinay, your
That's
comments.
right. Yes, right. Absolutely right, sir. Because see, to produce the results in counseling, it takes time, and you need to give a
Yeah,
lot of time to the patient. And in a fast world like this, we can't afford much time to give, and even patient won't
right.
be waiting
That
unlimitedly
is
to
very
improve.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. So we have to hit hard with a
Yes.
proper drug. Yes,
Yes.
Devdatta.
We may take help of medication initially and
Yeah,
help the non-medical treatment also, and that will both
right,
go hand in hand so that at early
right.
stage we may be
Yes,
able to withdraw his
right.
medicine.
That's right.
Sure.
Absolutely right. We have to judiciously use
Yes.
medical therapy, counseling,
Yes.
cognitive behavioral therapy,
Yes.
and some
Yes.
physical therapy like pranayam yoga. And
Yes.
this is a decision has to be taken by a healthcare provider who is primarily looking at that particular patient or who is that patient's family doctor.
Right.
So one more question
Saili,
from
if there
Dr.
are no
Nilesh.
questions, yeah,
So one question
yeah,
from
go ahead.
Dr. Nilesh Gosavi. Hypoglycemia impact on patient depression?
Vinay, you would like to have comment?
No, I have.
So should I
I
repeat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no.
Hypoglycemia impact on patient depression? Means does hypoglycemia impacts on patient depression?
Uh,
Indurgar sir.
I don't think so because hypoglycemia is a transient condition
Yeah.
which improves maybe within few minutes or few hours. So it's not a continuous long-term or long-standing state where the patient is going to remain hypoglycemic.
That's right.
I think if there are repeated hypos, patient may lose the confidence in his life, and in such situations, there could be some adverse effect on depression. But this is extremely rare. Probably I must have seen one or two patients in so many years. So yes, hypo definitely affects if it occurs repeatedly. The patient's confidence goes down. Otherwise, no data, no direct effect.
Yes.
Yes. So one question. Definitely, the depressed
Yeah.
diabetic patient must have to take new action. Family members has to take new action to ameliorate the depression. Apart from antidepressant drugs, so lifestyle management is also important.
Of course.
Yes.
I think now we take lifestyle management unless and until we develop a disease. I think all of us, whether you have disease or not, whether you have anxiety or depression, I think walking, doing good exercise, mental relaxation, I think is part of life. And someone comes to the doctor that he is not feeling well, probably that is a time you have to add a medication, add a therapeutic drug, and then only you have to tackle that.
Right.
Yes, sir. So one question for Dr. Chapalgavkar. Patient with obstructive sleep apnea with major depression. So antidepressant will increase the severity of snoring. How to tackle this situation?
See, first of all, we have to get sleep studies and all everything investigation done from chest physician, and we can always try to give depression antidepressant which are daytime non-sedative, and then reassess the things.
Yeah. So one more question from Dr. Shikha Agrawal. Choice of treatment for neuropathy with depression.
Yes, neuropathy.
Devdutt.
Yes, neuropathy and depression again, they are very comorbid because any chronic disease, whether with diabetes or neuropathy, anything which takes a lot of time to improve, depression is bound to be there in majority of the patients. And in patients with depression and neuropathy, I think SNRI are a better choice than SSRI.
That's right.
Yes. So one more question. They say exercise is the best natural antidepressant. Please elaborate the mechanism by which exercise helps depression.
I think
Vinay?
See, you have to enjoy the exercise, right? If you have some aim and objective of reducing the weight, wants to do certain calories burning, that is not going to elevate your depression in any way. You have to enjoy the thing, and that automatically the things, if you start enjoying, that is bound to take away some part of depression.
Yes, sir.
So positive attitude is
Yes.
probably important.
That's
But
right.
you are depressed and you are lying, you want to get cured by exercise. It is impossible.
Difficult, yeah.
So one more question. Repeated hypoglycemia will cause some dementia.
yes.
Unlikely.
Yeah, basically,
Devdutt.
if the hypoglycemia is severe and it is long lasting, maybe for more than a few minutes,
Right,
then
right.
even if you correct that, that episode is going to have some metabolic abnormalities, some scarring on the brain. So many a times we see that in patients who are relatively young, diabetics, they have on FLAIR imaging multiple hyperintense foci in the periventricular area. So those type of patients, they develop dementia, and that is a type of dementia called as a vascular dementia.
Okay.
Yes. So one question from Dr. Amol. Diagnosis of depression is important because depression is vague term. Need to see whether it's a bipolar depression or post-psychotic depression or recurrent depressive disorder. So management of depression changes as per the diagnosis. Cognitive behavioral therapy definitely has a role. Just a comment, sir.
That's right. You have to assess everything once you have to see the patient and go
Yeah.
accordingly.
Yes. So last question, patients on insulin are more depressed than patients on oral hypoglycemic agents. Why?
It is not really so, but they are unhappy because they are on injectables, not on tablets.
Okay.
I think if there are no questions,
Yes,
Saili,
yes. So it was completely a delightful presentation, which was a real blend of diabetes, neurology, and psychiatry. And surely, sir, the clinical and the evidence-based insights provided by you will again help us for our daily clinical practices. And in such pandemic situations, sir, we can just hope for the better tomorrow with such online meets and sessions. So once again, I thank Dr. Indurkar sir, Dr. Chapalgavkar sir, and Dr. Deshmukh sir for joining us today in evening and giving us your valuable time. And also, I thank all the attendee doctors, residents who are listening to us. And I think such meets will really help us lot to cope up with this situation, sir. With this note, I just thank you all of you for joining us. And on behalf of Team Eldorado Biotech, again I thank you a lot. Have a great night, sir.
thank you, Vinay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Devdutt. Thank you,
Yes.
Saili. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Yes.